So excited to be back with another Amps and Sound. Not my favorite of all the names, but I do love the brand and the products. This is the Agartha. I did the bigger bin a while back. I've had this for, feels like coming up on a year, so I thought it was really overdue for a review. I really loved the bigger bin. As sort of part of that never-ending quest to find the perfect amplifier to drive the Susvara. That eventually moved on, and this eventually came into my life. They were not ships crossing in the night. There was some breaks, so I couldn't compare them directly to each other, but spent a lot of time with the bigger bin, so I have a pretty good sort of sonic memory of what that was offering and the differences here. This is a 300B power tube amplifier. Amps and Sound offers another 300B. I think it's called the Red Dawn, maybe, or something like that. It's sort of in that Nautilus class, that 13, 14 grand super, cost no object sort of category. This is a reasonable 6 grand or so. This is actually the 2021 version. I guess the Agartha came out like a while back and then sort of got mothballed, and then this updated version came out a couple years ago. Very recently there's a Rev 2 that uses a different input tube, 12AX7, and we'll talk about that. There'll be a little tube rolling at the end of this, as there often is in these videos. I'll walk you around it real quick. Not a lot to it in terms of I/O. You've got your standard power plug back there, power switch. Hey, what's that? Speaker taps. That's right. This is not only a headphone amp, it's a speaker amp, which is pretty fantastic. Only one set of inputs, which is not the end of the world, but two sets of inputs for me would make this thing one of those sort of killer all-in-one options. But one set of inputs is fine. Along the side, you have the variable impedance headphone sockets, which is really awesome, from low Z to high Z, 16, 32, 100. Very nice. Like, I think I talked about this on the bigger bin. It's so great to be able to try different impedances with different headphones and find that perfect marriage for the sound signature that you're looking for. Nice stepped attenuator, clicky click volume knob. I want to say it's maybe in the 24-ish. Should we count? 1, 2, 3. No. I feel like I'm always like right in between these two with the Susvara. I wish it was at a little more fidelity. Hum pots, which is great in terms of controlling background hum on what are very powerful power tubes, 300Bs, able to make somewhere around 8 watts. I think in this configuration it's about 7 watts at 8 ohms, 5-ish watts at 32 ohms. So very powerful amp using a tube that doesn't find itself in a lot of headphone amplifiers. Much like I think when I talked about the Stratus, Donald North Audio, like 2A3s, 300Bs, these are not like dead silent tubes. They're powerful tubes. They're powerful like single-ended triodes, and so managing that power well and keeping it really quiet for something as delicate as a headphone is a real chore. Ultimately, I would not say that this is the perfect amp if you're trying to find, like, if you're trying to power IEMs, it's definitely not the perfect amp. If you're trying to power, really high sensitivity headphones, I also don't think it's the best pairing. I think there's other tubey options I might lean into. But if you want to drive the big boys, if you want to drive the big plain R's, the low sensitivity headphones, it's a pretty exciting option because the 300Bs. Let's get these guys out here. These are the JJs, which come stock, so to speak. Now, you will notice on these 4 pins, 2A3s, 300Bs, a couple other patterns, that they are subtly different in sizes, and it's really important to pay attention to that even when you're making a video, because that's a great way to jack up and wear down your pins. Your whatever, the place that you plug the pins in, technical terms. This guy is driven by a 6SL7, which is sort of like a 6S and 7, but I want to say lower power, or lower gain. And then it's also tube rectified with a 6AX5, not a tube that I'm super familiar with, but good news, pretty inexpensive. Like I said, I'll do a little tube rolling in the end here. At a high level, like, what does this thing sound like? It sounds just phenomenal. Like, 300Bs have a reputation for a reason. It has a lot of the qualities of a dramatic single-ended tube like a 2A3, but it does it with more confidence. The sort of the mid-range comes a bit more forward, vocals come a bit more forward. They've got this sort of intimacy. It's like intimacy and attack, but then you've still got all the great sort of romantic traits of that single-ended transformer coupled sound that I just love so much. But the 300B so far, of all the various single-ended triode designs I've tried and topologies I've tried, is definitely speaking to me a lot. And I did tried these things with a ton of different headphones, as well as with a couple different pairs of speakers, and it was so compelling as a speaker amplifier. I ultimately decided to go 300B for my speakers as well. I would have almost happily left this in the system, except I wanted as my headphone amp, and those two places are not the same place. So aside from some really long cable runs, that didn't make sense. Another day, another topic for that one. But yeah, so tubes. What are you going to do? So I would say, in my experience, rolling 300Bs is very expensive. So not an area I played around with a ton. I did go from these to the Genelex Gold Lion PX 300Bs. At the time, I feel like the JJs are somewhere around $300. Those were around $300. They may be more expensive now, unfortunately, due to everything that's going on with Russia. But they for me were a huge upgrade, even though they're seemingly sort of price equivalent. I just think that the Genelex Gold Line sounded, the detail and separation was just so much better. They're just more 3D, more spacious, had that nice weight on the bottom. And like I said, when this is what it came with, I had no other 300Bs on hand because it's not a tube that I've invested in. So like plugging this thing in, listening to it with the stock tubes, just revolutionary. Just blew my mind. Sounded so good with the Susvara. Popping in the Gold Lions, I was like, just wow. There's more here. That's amazing. Like, often tube upgrades are sort of subtle and incremental. That was like a big one for me, especially for such an incremental spend. I did ultimately get to try the new, like brand new, in production now, Western Electrics. Those are whatever, 5x the price. Hard to justify, but they are better. They genuinely are better. There's more energy. There's more body to everything. There's more weight in the low end. And they just give the Susvara that like real bass impact that I've always wanted it to have, without like muddying it up or losing any separation. So they are actually, I have one of them here. Oh, pretty, it's so funny. Like, this tube costs 5 times as much as this tube. Can you spot the difference? It's so crazy, and I try not to lose my mind on this stuff. But anyway, that's where I ended up there. I think like I'd be really interested to hear a few other things on it, but that's a very expensive pursuit. The place, as is often the case, where you're going to get a lot of impact in terms of tube rolling and how you end up sort of influencing the sound signature is in your drive tube, your gain tube, the thing that's taking the line level signal and pushing it into your power tubes. This is often the place where you're going to get the most noticeable changes, for better or for worse, changes in coloration, changes in presentation, and with a single tube like we have here, so I think these are presumably dual triodes, although basically you've got stereo. It's a stereo tube, right? It's not a mono tube, pushing 2 signals left and right channels through it. It's pretty cheap, right? You don't have to get a matched pair like you might in some other designs. So that's kind of nice. Pros and cons, of course. So I was emailing with Justin about this amp and talking about, and he's like, "Oh, you're driving Susvaras. Well, you should really get a tube adapter and throw in a 12AX7 and really sort of juice this thing up." So I did just that, and I happen to have a bunch of 12AX7s from various other projects. How to focus? Yes, I happen to have a bunch of 12AX7s from other projects, so I got to try a number of different things there. Across the board, the 12AX7 for me was a big improvement over the 6SL 7 in that it just was able to sort of manage peaks better. It just gave more energy, which helped out a little bit with the overall noise floor. And then it just could sort of manage, like I was listening to Aoife O'Donovan has this song, Sister Starling, and it's sort of sweet and quiet at the beginning, and then it's just got these big boomy bits, and her vocals are just like very powerful, and they're very prone to like overwhelming a system or making it clip. With the right pairing of 12AX7, found a very good fit. Tried the PS Vane 12AX7S, which seemed like a little more open. There was some sort of crisp little detail present that was more noticeable in definition, but a little drier, which is funny. It's like I feel like that's true of that brand. I don't feel like two brands have house sounds, but there's something about the PS Vane stuff that's always like a little brighter, a little crisper, a little drier. Genelex ECC 83, more powerful. It's not the same crispness or spatial qualities, but the bass feels bigger and overall just a bit shoutier and a bit clippier. Ultimately settled, I tried some tungstol as well. Anyway, ultimately settled on this Sylvania 5751, which is a similar spec to the 12AX7, but just slightly less powerful. And that was just a home run. So that's kind of where I ended up there. On the rectifier, I've on various amps I've experienced pretty significant impacts to the sound signature with the right rectifier. I tried a few. It's not a super like sought after loved tube, so there's not a ton of documentation to find like what people like and don't and what matches with what. So I bought a batch, tried a few. I tried a solid state one too, just for fun, and didn't really push the sound that much either way. So I felt like that wasn't really going to be the right area to spend a ton of time on. So there you have it, the Amps and Sound Agartha 300B headphone and speaker amp. Another winner from the Amps and Sound folks. To date, my favorite headphone for the Susvara, and I have tried a ton. All right, we'll leave it there. Signcraft, signing out.